Hey guys, what's up? It's Bridget. Welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all having an awesome day. And today is Wednesday, so you guys know what that means. Today is another Weirdo Wednesday, where today we're going to talk about the case of the ghost blimp. Some of you guys have not heard of this. Maybe a few of you have. If you have, that's really cool. I did a lot of research on this case, and today we're going to talk about the case of the L8 blimp, which went missing in 1942 during World War II, and the mysterious circumstances around it. So without any further ado, let's jump into the video. Alright guys, before we get started, pivot every single freaking day. Wednesdays we do random, cool, sometimes crime or mystery videos, and you know, during the rest of the week it's beauty and makeup stuff like normal. I feel like I need a different background for this type of video. Doesn't seem like the right fit. Anyways, let's get started. So this story takes place in World War II. World War II started in 1940, but the US did not get involved until 1941 after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, which left a ton of people dead. So in 1942, at the Battle of Midway, US troops had damaged the Japanese Army and Navy and had kind of demolished their Navy enough where they had enough time to set up a defense line. The US had enough time to set up on the West Coast and prepare for the next wave of attacks from the Japanese. The L8 airship was one of these ships sent out to kind of scout out the area and sink any incoming submarines or Japanese ships coming towards them. This is not the first flight the L8 has taken, and its pilots were very experienced. The typical crew for the L8 was 3 men, but on this day that we're particularly talking about, there was only 2 men due to weight issues. They were carrying a lot of cargo, and the 2 men were Lieutenant Ernest DeWitt Cody. He was 27 years old, and he had previously piloted the L8 with 300 pounds of parts for B-52 bombs in the Doolittle raid on April 18th, 1942. So he was very experienced, especially with this ship in particular. He had a lot of faith in his piloting abilities, and his commanding officer said he was one of the most prestigious, best pilots. You can trust him to do the job correctly, and he was very well liked among these soldiers. The other man aboard was Charles E. Adams. He was 34 years old, and he was a decorated soldier who had even rescued people from the Hindenburg crash in Germany. So a little bit about the L8 in particular. It was a massive blimp. It was over 150 feet long, and it could travel up to 43 knots or 49 miles per hour. It was loaded that day with a machine gun, some bombs to sink submarines, and some ammunition. So it was loaded up with a lot of stuff, and that's why the weight only allowed for 2 passengers. On April 16, 1942, near the San Francisco Bay and Treasure Island, the L8 departed for its mission. This was not the first mission, but it was more like a scouting mission to see if it could find and detect any Japanese troops or suspicious activity. The trip was scheduled to be a 4-hour trip just to scout out the area. It would make 2 points and come back to its home base, so it would make a triangular path. At 7:42 a.m., Lieutenant Cody called in to say that they were 4 miles off the shore of Farallon, which was their first point, and they had detected an oil slick on the water and were going to investigate. The blimp circled the area for over an hour, dropped its height down to 200 or 300 feet above the water, and were spotted by 2 ships along the way. So while they were investigating, they shot off 2 light flares, 2 Mark IV flares, and the Liberty ship in the nearby area saw that and set off their alarm. The other ship that had spotted them was a fishing ship and decided to bring in their nets and go back to the shore. The Liberty ship that spotted them said that there were 2 men still in the gondola, and after a little bit of time, no missiles or anything was fired, and they decided to look up and saw 2 men in the gondola area, and they rose the ship back up and headed back to San Francisco where they started. Now, this could have meant that the men were alerted by something that wasn't actually there. They decided to investigate after they shot their flares off and just decided to head back. They didn't see anything and no one shot at them, so they just headed back to their base. Since the base knew that the men might be investigating something that could potentially be dangerous on the water, they decided to keep trying to contact them again and see if they could find out where the L8 was, but they never heard anything from the men. At 10:49 a.m., the L8 was spotted over the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and then about 10 minutes later, it was found to be about 2,000 feet up in the sky over Sedona Beach. A few minutes after that, it was spotted again at Mile Rock Beach, so it had been making its way across the San Francisco area. So during its little journey around the San Francisco area, off-duty seaman Richard Quam spotted the L8 from the highway and snapped a picture of it, where you can see it has a very weird V-shaped bend into it. 15 minutes after he took that picture, the blimp was headed towards Ocean Beach, where it went behind some hills, snagged a cliff. There's actually pictures of it snagging stuff. The engine filled up with dirt. It bent the propellers, and the obvious thing is that the blimp was not in the best of shape. It was filled with dirt, so the engine couldn't run properly, and the bent propellers mean it couldn't fly the right direction. After being damaged, the blimp suffered one more blow, and that was that it lost an anti-submarine missile. It fell out into the water, and it lost 325 pounds of weight, so the airship began to rise again. At the local Olympic Club, there were several spottings from the golf course that said they saw different things from this blimp. So the first man claimed that he saw a parachute leaving the blimp. The second man said that there were 2 men still in the gondola at the time it was falling, and the third bystander swears that there were 3 people in the gondola, not 2, as should have been on the airship. At 11:30 a.m. in Dale City, the L8 finally made its landing. It had hit some roofs and got tied into some electrical wires, and it was really hard to stop, so eventually it just plowed down the street, and no one was injured, thankfully, but it did land. The engine was destroyed and gasoline was pouring out of the engine, coating the roads. Now, local fireman William Morris decided to investigate and go inside and try to save the crew on board. Now, when he went inside, he didn't find the crew, and that was very strange. Other strange things, besides the fact that the men were missing, is that all the parachutes were still in their right place. Everything was still in line. The classified documents, the lifeboats, the bombs, the ammunition, everything was still where it was supposed to be. The radio worked, the engine was still turned on, and there were still 6 hours worth of fuel left, even though it looked as if some of the fuel had been dumped from inside. The door to the cabin was propped open, so it wasn't able to close, and the safety bar across the doorway was removed. The blimp's battery was dead, and even a microphone used to communicate was dropped from the doorway, and it was just hanging out of it, which was very strange. And honestly, that's all we know. There are so many theories as to what made this crash. Did it have anything to do with the oil slick? And what happened to the 2 men? They were never heard from again after being heard from the first check-in when they said they're going to investigate the oil slick. Now, if it had anything to do with the oil slick, it probably wouldn't have made it back to San Francisco with nothing touching it. It was a clean blimp. There are so many theories as to what happened to the 2 men. The year after this, they were already declared dead, so we can only speculate as to what actually happened to them. So the first theory is that they were Japanese spies. So that is a possibility, sure. But also, they were very decorated soldiers, so it's highly unlikely that they were spies. But you never know. Second theory is that they were abducted by aliens or abducted by Japanese soldiers. I don't believe the alien part, but a lot of people believe that because they're vanished. I mean, someone had to steer the ship through all these little beaches and cities to get it back to San Francisco, Dale City to land. So who knows how it drove itself there if there was no one inside. So another theory, along with being spies and enemy capture, is that the third man spotted by one of the people on the golf course could have been a stowaway and decided to kill these 2 men and dump their bodies somewhere. So that is actually, I think, one of the most believable possibilities, is that someone was hiding in the ship and decided to kill the men. And that might explain the one parachute scene, is that the man escaped. So that is a really good possibility that someone stowed away, killed the men, threw them overboard, and then took one of the parachutes that they came with when they were stowaway, since the parachutes were still inside the ship, and kind of vacated the premises. So it is a possibility. The next question that we have here is, was there an incident that made them prop the door open? Did maybe they go outside to investigate and try to get a sample of the oil slick, and maybe one man fell overboard and the other tried to prop open the door just to kind of reach up and grab him? That's another theory that is pretty believable. Like, they went down to try to see something in the water. They were only 300 feet above, so maybe they leaned out to see it up close, and maybe one man was dangling overboard and the other one tried to grab him and pull him up. But that's why the door was open and neither man were inside. Maybe they fell. So either way, any way you put it, the men just disappeared, which is very sad, especially for the families. So I'm sorry that their families never got any answers, their friends, and no one had any answers as to what happened to these men, or what caused this blimp to go up and down and over the places, and it was just a lot. I don't know what happened to him. You guys can leave me your theories in the description box down below. Tell me what you think of the ghost blimp and what happened to these two men on board. I'd love to hear what you think. Anyways, I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching today's video. I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.